Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the U Talk Show, where we are the answer to your social problems. Unfortunately, that can't be true. Watching two guys on YouTube, hell, you can watch an entire five guys on YouTube if you really want. It's not going to fix the big problems. We all have to work together for that.
It may fix your hunger, though.
And if you're a very specific type of person, it may also fix your thirst. Now, Man Week comes to a close, gradually, and the last thing we spoke about was false prophets and snake oil salesmen. And a big thing that we pointed out was that there are people who will take advantage of... I really feel like I'm working with some of my autistic kids here. Because they will take advantage of the big emotions and the uncertainty which you feel. And they will try and sell you different emotions. Or they will try and sell you someone to blame. And we would be doing exactly the same if we didn't at least try to suggest that there may be hope, that there are things that you can do to improve your lot in life. So we're going to take a stab at it. We're going to try and help you to understand that the problems men face can be solved. There are solutions. And the hard truth is that sometimes those solutions require a little more introspection than we're completely comfortable with. That's why I'm in therapy. Kyle.
So, with that, let's ask who is I screwed it up. Who and what is the answer? Well, let's go more with what, okay? Because there are a few things which I think that people can do, and this is basically all my notes. So, what is the answer? And then maybe let's talk about, who can help guide you over the long term. So, first up, learn more. You need to learn more, experience different perspectives. And I don't mean, experience like the same person, but with, different faces and voices. I mean, experience perspectives that you disagree with. Actually, seriously consider their perspective. Ask how they came to that conclusion. Come to understand them, not judge them, but come to understand them. Yes, there are people out there that are terrible and just shitty people. We're not talking about them. We're talking, even in their case, try and understand them. But generally speaking, most people aren't intentionally terrible people. Most people came to a conclusion because it seemed logical to them based on their life experience. So experience their perspective, understand where they're coming from, and look at the hard information they provide. For this, we'll probably provide some links in the description to different YouTubers that we think have interesting perspectives and who can teach you something.
They're probably going to be YouTubers that Kyle thinks has an interesting perspective, because I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to lie. I don't spend a lot of time in the self-help bits of YouTube. So any of my link contributions will be educational stuff.
A lot of mine are actually going to be educational as well. So, I actually am less on the self-help thing and more about the educational stuff. But, that being said, there are a few self-help channels that will probably be included. But that being said, then there's the second one. You might remember in episode 2, we talked about what it takes, or what men need to be happy. Start working on that. Seriously, just start working. Start with personal development. All right, that's the first thing you're going to start working on
as well.
Yeah, and
because we really went for some of the broad strokes. We really went for the broad strokes of what men need to be happy, and to a large part, they are the same thing that anyone needs to be happy. But we can give you the broad strokes. We can give you what is generally true, but you, as a man, probably want some very specific things out of your life, and until you've been able to elucidate what they are, figuring out how to get there is going to be difficult. So figure out what it is that you want.
Yeah. and start working on it. Okay, like it'll, we talked about Andrew Tate last episode. One thing that he got right is that if you want happiness, or he didn't quite put it this way, but to translate what he said into something that I would say, if you want happiness, you will have to suffer for it. It's my and I can't believe I'm giving her this much credit, but she was right. My mother had a saying: if you cry today, you'll no, if you laugh today, you'll be crying tomorrow and the next day. But if you cry a little today, you'll be laughing for the rest of your life. What she was essentially saying was take on the hardship, persevere through it, work towards something, and you'll have that something for the rest of your life. All right, work towards something, build something, work on yourself is where we suggest you start. All right, start with the personal development one and then move to the others. All right, I would suggest purpose is the second one. All right, personal development, perseverance, and then go with purpose, and then the last two there. And the last one, and I cannot stress this enough because I struggle with this one myself. It is one that I know I need to keep to, but I don't like. I really have not. How do I explain this in a short space of time? Okay, so we talked about emotional development. I put my emotional development on hold for a number of years entirely. Completely separated, all emotion from anything I was doing. And, then I completely collapsed and I had to basically fix my mental health because it had gone to hell. And I've spent years doing that. The worst part of all of that is that I have lacked this next one, and that is integrity. All right, integrity is the one thing you need to and you should have at all costs. And integrity is very simple. It is just you say it, you do it. All right, you say it and you do it. Your word must be the most important thing. If you say you're going to do something, you're going to go out and do it. I've said on this show as we're recording that there is a mountain that I'm looking at right now. I am going to climb that today. After we're done recording, I am going to take a shower, put on my work boots, and I'm going to go climb that mountain. That is what I'm going to do.
I actually know the mountain he's talking about, and it's probably not sensible to reach the top of it, but, climb the damn mountain. It's actually a really pretty walk.
I'm gonna get to the top of it either. I'm gonna get to the top of it. I'm gonna take a photo. I'm going to include it in this video. All right, I'm gonna flash it up on screen right now. All right, so you will know if I lack integrity, you will know. And if I forget to take that photo while I'm up there, I will climb it a second time to get that. That is what integrity means. You do what you say you're gonna do. Okay, you do not lie. Okay, integrity is essentially honesty. But it's honesty about your actions, not just your words. And it is the single most important thing. Now, that is what is the answer. Do we talk about who is the answer? You got any suggestions? People who have, even part of the answer.
So I would actually like to recommend someone who is a little bit of an unconventional pick. Dr. Sabine Horsenfelder is a physicist in Germany, and she does a regular series of videos called Science Without the Gobbledygook. But a large amount of this, for instance, she's done something, for instance, approaching why it is so easy to be sucked in by social media. She's done stuff about, why is it so much more common for people to say that they're autistic now, as well as stuff like, what is this data coming out of Fermilab in Europe saying that we've screwed something up? She does a lot of psychological stuff, which is really very educational and broadly useful. And she also just has a very, very similar sense of humor to mine, so I'd recommend that. I don't think she's the answer to the problems that men face, but I think that she is an excellent resource for your personal development as a more fully realized person. Um, Honestly, I think that as for who might be the answer, if you're in Australia, which I hope most of our viewers are, there is a series of men's sheds around the country. These are places where men can gather. Um, they can do stuff with their hands, like work on projects, they can talk. And I think that getting involved with those spaces is very important, both if you're someone who is perhaps a little older and who has knowledge to impart, or perhaps if you're younger and you don't have that direction in life yet. I think that as for who, that's where you want to be. You want to seek out people who can teach you or people to whom you can be a positive influence. I don't think that there's a YouTube link for that. I think that you need to get out there and you need to partake in and build community. And that
You
is
know what?
something that we as men have neglected so much and that we need to do to fix our shit.
You know what? You're in a way you kind of blindsided me there because it seems obvious in hindsight, but I actually didn't think about that. I didn't like, I'm thinking about all of these resources that people can tap into, which are all online. But yeah, let's face it, the biggest influences are going to be people you know personally. The people who are going to be the answer, who are going to teach you things, essentially teach you how to move forward and help you to find, purpose, help you to develop personally, are going to be people that you know. Which again, in hindsight, is very obvious, but you know, completely, you know, complete blind spot for me just there. But yeah, that's kind of it. You know what? If I can go for just a tiny bit of shameless self promotion here, um, one of the
Bing.
policies that we have talked about taking to an election is the Groves project and the Crucible project. Essentially, the Groves being a kind of garden that's communal, where it's kind of run by philosophers, um, and people in the community can come in. They can work on things. Perhaps then the philosophers, build a kind of a piece in the garden. A little water fountain type thing. With a statue in it. And at the same time, offer them advice of a kind of, spiritual nature, or, I guess emotional development, and sort of that, aspect of society, that communal and very cultural aspect of society, which religion used to fill. Um, and so I'd say something like that is the answer. And I'd say, in a sense, the men's sheds that you were talking about is partly that in a way. More of a focus on working with your hands, but again, it's very communal and very developmental in the same, well, in a similar way to what the Groves project is supposed to be. The Crucibles project, on the other hand, is supposed to be, in a similar way to how a crucible would temper steel, these, sort of almost like small stadiums, or not amphitheaters per se, but basically gathering places for dozens, perhaps over 100 people, would have ideas tested on a local level. People talking about ideas and how to create a better society, how to develop personally. Essentially kind of like how the internet's turned into the public square. This would be kind of like another public square, only to be something in person to provide more of that sense of local community. And so I think that's what we need is things like that as well. Because let's face it, the internet may be the world's largest library of information and the largest and most unrestricted free market of ideas, but you're not going to get a whole lot of personal relationships out of it. The best
Yeah.
analog that I can think of was back in the day on Xbox Live. They were some of the best friends that I ever knew, but now like the second I stopped having access to Xbox Live, they're no longer there. And that'd be very different to people in a community on a local level because well you can't just get disconnected from them. They're there and they will be there and you can build something with them that you and I can't believe the words are coming out of my mouth because I am a huge fan of online gaming communities and the joy that can be had in them and how important they were to my development. But physical communities in person do have something that online communities lack, and that is that very physical, in person, um, communal nature. And that is
So
something that is not like you can try and create an analog for it, but you can't replace that. It is irreplaceable.
so what I'm hearing is that you need to go to like your local games workshop, or your local games paradise, or whoever has Warhammer going, and then try and not get drawn in by the accidental Nazis.
Wait, what? Where's the Nazis in Warhammer?
Well, that's sort of the problem. It can get a little bit difficult to tell.
I mean, look, granted, Warhammer is. I mean, look, it's set in a grimdark universe where humanity lives under essentially a fascist dictatorship with a
Mm-hmm.
bloated bureaucracy and a dying carcass of an empire, which totally doesn't remind me of any country in the world, United States.
The US.
Yeah. Um, but I think look, my experience of the community is that they're quite lovely. But again, that's my experience, and everyone like just as I said, you need to experience different perspectives. You need to gain an understanding of different people's experiences because my experience may be an isolated case. It might not be representative, and so that's what you need to get in the world in that regard. Um, and the best way to gain experiences is to talk with and instead of judging, rather learn from other people in communities. With physical communities being, probably the best, but some online communities being a decent alternative, although still lacking in certain regards. And with that, we've run out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
I'd like to say that with regards to online communities, it's a bit of a weird one to say. When I was about 14 through about 17, I was mentored by a much older gentleman. Um,
Okay, I'm getting some priestly
that
vibes here.
relationship ended because he passed away.
Oh, okay.
And
Did that only
he
just
taught me
come
a
through?
lot
Or?
as a photographer, right? He taught me a lot as a photographer. Um, and I think that is sort of a lot of the way in which men bond. They bond around doing things.
Mm, yeah.
But in the middle of that, he also taught me a lot about what it was to be a man. And this is part of the reason I mentioned the Men's Shed Initiative specifically, is because men I've found aren't really given to just randomly opening up and talking about how things feel and being vulnerable. But
Yeah.
if you put a bunch of guys in a room while they're working on their woodwork, they'll talk about how it feels to be a widow. They'll talk
Mm,
about how they're worried about how the farm's doing. When there is something to do, when it doesn't feel like the primary focus of the interaction is to be vulnerable, when it's just what happens while you're working, that comes far more naturally, I found.
yeah. I get what you're saying, and I've got two things that I can actually refer to. One was painting miniatures. As part of a gaming club, They did painting days every like second Sunday.
Hmm.
Um, and I very much enjoy painting days. And essentially what we do is we paint our figurines. I'd paint my D&D minis. Um, and then and we just talk. And often we like sometimes it'd delve into different things that were very personal. And it kind of just it didn't prompt it, but it just kind of induced it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And yeah, and that's I see a psychologist, and that's kind of almost opposed to how things go with my psychologist, where I'm trying to get it out, but it's not easily
It's
induced
a
because
fight.
I mean, look, we've sort of talked on this show, and Horst made the comment that I separate myself from myself. I very much separate my emotions from who I am, and it's very difficult to talk about them because I intellectualize everything. I separate it from myself. I really, put it out of the focus, and it takes a good sometimes 20, 30, even 40 minutes just to really start getting into the meat of things. Which is why if I had the finances, I'd book 2 hour sessions once a week because it'd take that first 40 minutes just to get into it, and then we could do the real work. Um, but yeah, in that way, it's I'm losing my train of thought here, but you can kind of those are two examples of just how right you are about that. And we've gone over time now, so ending it now. But
Yeah.
thanks for talking with this Horst. This is a very interesting episode.
Yeah, this got a
Um,
little bit more real than I think we expected with this sort of
yeah,
abstract, like, how do we fix things?
yeah. And hopefully everyone forgives my shameless self promotion of my ideas there as well. but
But this is also part of how we fix things. We can lead by example
yeah,
by opening up and accepting that our pasts have shaped us.
yeah, couldn't have put it better
Yeah.
myself.
We'll
Thanks for
catch
watching,
y'all
everyone.
later. Have a lovely evening.